Well, now to the plans to flood-proof Adelaide's inner and southern suburbs. The local councils are trying to put measures in place to counter the 1-in-100-year flood, but some locals aren't happy. Kate Dorsey has more.
We're going to have a massive concrete wall.
The dams work, they mitigate flood, but in terms of the environment, the heritage, the amenity, they're over the top.
There's no doubt that flooding occurs along the Brownhill and Keswick Creeks, with residents and businesses suffering from localised flooding.
I know that there's been people who have had floods halfway up their windows.
This flood in 2005 was dubbed a 1-in-20-year event. President of the Residents for Effective Stormwater Solutions, Suzette Asavich, says this level of rising water caused significant property damage and terrified residents living in houses along the Brownhill and Keswick Creeks.
November 2005 was a 1-in-20 and there would have been people fearing for their lives.
And just a month ago, this is how fast the Keswick Creek was flowing right through Wayville.
The red here, Suzette, what does that indicate on the map?
That means extreme hazard, and that would be likelihood of greater than 2 metres inundation.
In that sense, what's their worst fear?
Probably when it's not very deep, it would be mainly their property, but once it got deeper, I think it would be their life.
So 7 years ago, the state government and the 5 affected councils started working towards stopping this localised flood damage and mitigating against the risk of a 1-in-100-year flood.
The risk is well known, potentially flooding of 5,000 properties in a 1-in-100-year flood event, possible closure of the Adelaide airport for some days, the disruption of the north-south rail corridor from Adelaide to Melbourne.
Nicholas Newland is the Brownhill Keswick Creek Stormwater Project Director. He says the financial risk of flooding is too great to ignore.
All of the evidence that we have from flood mapping work that's been done indicates to us that the damage bill from a 1-in-100-year flood could be $200 million or more.
Sounds simple enough, but countless reports, experts and consultants later, the problem is no closer to being resolved. And it's this site here at Brownhill Creek that is now the focus of the conflict.
It would be approximately 24 metres high and about 135 metres across. So to give you an idea of what that would look like, imagine a block of apartments 8 stories high across there.
This dam wall is the point of contention, and depending on who you talk to, it may or may not look like this. But either way, Project Director Nicholas Newland says damming Brownhill Creek is necessary.
Some sort of mitigating structure in the upper reaches of Brownhill Creek is an integral part of us being able to achieve the sort of outcome that we're looking for.
To be honest, instead of looking at green and trees, you would be looking at a concrete wall.
2 retired engineers, Peter Collins and John Wilson, have co-authored a report. In direct opposition to the views of the proponents, Peter Collins and John Wilson say the damming of Brownhill Creek will make no difference to 3/4 of the flooding.
People downstream believe that the flood mitigation project will eliminate all flooding, and that's not the case.
It costs basically 4 times as much to build the dams as the long-term benefit you would get downstairs. It would be a waste of public money.
We certainly don't want to waste taxpayers' money either.
I just wake up every morning and thinking I'm in paradise. It's a piece of heaven, I think, with the birds and the beautiful natural environment so close to the city.
Marcus Beresford has lived at Brownhill Creek for the past 14 years. Not surprisingly, the last thing he wants is a dam in his backyard.
I just thought, I can't believe that, here's this little forgotten corner and they want to ruin it with massive concrete dams.
Nicholas Newland argues that the potential risk of a 1-in-100-year flood is just too great.
If we have a 1-in-100-year flood, we'll have 25 cubic metres per second coming from the Mitcham Council across Cross Road. Now, That will fill an Olympic swimming pool in under 1 minute.
It's not just about the financial impact, it's about the aesthetic impact, it's about the environmental impacts holistically, and it's about, the waterproofing of Adelaide.
Mitcham Council is now working outside the project, but CEO Helen Dyer says she's still committed to a whole-of-catchment approach to flood mitigation.
Fundamentally, the council just wishes to be reassured that with the expenditure that's going to occur, that in fact that expenditure is going to get the best outcome, both for now but for also future generations.
Given the potential cost of a 1 in 100-year flood to the state government, the Stormwater Management Authority is setting up an independent mediator to meet with the Mitcham Council. But if mediation fails, the Stormwater Authority has the capacity, under its legislation, to issue a notice of intent to take action. In other words, if push comes to shove, the authority could force the Mitcham Council to allow the dam to be built.